Maya Rourke's Thursday afternoon started like any other, quiet, predictable, almost too normal. The soft hum of her laptop filled the air as she worked from her small home office, a mug of half-finished coffee cooling beside her. She loved this part of the day when the world seemed to slow down, and her thoughts finally made sense. Her neighborhood was peaceful, the kind of suburban calm people paid extra for birds, trimmed hedges, and the occasional bark of a dog in the distance. At exactly 4:03 p.m., her doorbell rang. It startled her, not because it was loud, but because it was unexpected. She wasn't waiting for a package, and no one usually visited her unannounced. She paused, listening. A second ring followed, a little longer this time. Maya stood up and glanced toward the front hallway. The house suddenly felt different, heavier, quieter. She checked the peephole. A man in a tan delivery uniform stood on her porch, holding a small brown box. He wasn't wearing a name tag. His face was calm, unreadable, almost too still. "Yes?" she called through the door. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Package for Maya Rourke." She frowned. "Who's it from?" He looked at the label, or at least pretended to. "Doesn't say. But I was told to hand it to you personally." Something in his tone felt off. Not threatening, but flat, like he'd practiced the line. She hesitated. Every instinct told her not to open the door. But curiosity, that quiet pull that always wins, made her unlock the deadbolt. She opened the door just a few inches. Enough to see the box up close. No return address, no barcode. Just her name written in black marker. The handwriting looked rushed, almost messy. "Can you leave it on the porch?" she asked. "I'm supposed to give it to you directly." He stretched his arm toward her. She didn't like it, but she also didn't want to cause a scene. So she reached out, took the box and nodded. "Thanks." He turned and walked down the steps without another word. No friendly wave, no goodbye. His van, an unmarked white one, was parked across the street. She watched him drive off, the tires crunching over gravel until the sound faded. Maya closed the door quickly and locked it. She stared at the box for a few seconds, unsure what to do. She thought about calling the delivery company, but without a label or tracking number, what would she even say? She placed the box on the kitchen counter. It was light. Too light, maybe. She shook it gently. Something inside shifted, thin and flat. She reached for a pair of scissors, cut through the tape and peeled the flaps open. Inside was a plain white envelope. No writing, just sealed. Her stomach tightened. She tore it open carefully. A photograph slid out and landed on the counter. It was her bedroom. The photo was crisp, recent. Her unmade bed, the soft blue blanket she'd thrown aside that morning, her laptop still open on the nightstand. Even the sunlight angle was exactly how it had looked earlier. And then she saw the timestamp in the bottom right corner. 3:37 p.m. She froze. Her watch read 3:57 p.m. The picture had been taken 20 minutes ago. Her chest tightened. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, the ceiling, the corners of the room. Every creak of the house now sounded alive. Someone had been inside her home while she was there. Or maybe while she'd stepped out to get the mail earlier. Her hands started to shake. She looked around, trying to spot something out of place. Everything seemed normal, but that made it worse. Whoever took that picture had been careful, deliberate. She ran to her bedroom. The curtains were half drawn, just like in the photo. She scanned the room, under the bed, behind the door, inside the closet. Nothing. The air smelled faintly of her lavender candle, still fresh. No signs of entry, no broken locks, no footprints. Maya rushed back to the living room, grabbed her phone, and dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "There's someone watching me," she whispered. "I just got a package. It has a picture of my bedroom. Taken 20 minutes ago." "Stay on the line, ma'am," the dispatcher said calmly. "Are you in a safe place right now?" I don't know," she said. "I'm alone." The dispatcher told her to lock herself in a room and wait for the officers to arrive. Maya ran to the guest room, locked the door, and pressed her back against it. Every second felt longer than the last. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She thought of every sound she'd ignored that day. The soft thud she'd heard upstairs, the flicker of lights, the faint chill near her bedroom window. Had someone been there the whole time? The dispatcher kept her calm, asking questions, trying to gather details. But Maya's eyes kept darting to the window. The curtains swayed slightly, though the air was still. 10 minutes later, the police siren echoed down the street. Relief hit her so hard it almost made her cry. She unlocked the door and ran to meet them. 2 officers entered the house, checking every room. One of them, Officer Jensen, picked up the photograph from the counter and studied it. "You're sure this is your bedroom?" "Yes," she said. "The photo was taken less than half an hour ago." He frowned. "No sign of forced entry. Locks look fine." "Then how?" She stopped herself, the words catching. "How did they get inside?" "We'll check the windows and security footage," he said. "Do you have cameras?" She nodded. "One by the front door, one in the backyard." He asked her to pull up the feed. She logged into her phone and scrolled to the timestamp. 3:37 p.m. The video showed her front porch. For a split second, it glitched. The screen went black for 3 seconds, then came back on. Her throat tightened. That's when it was taken. The officer leaned closer. Could be a signal interruption. Maybe someone jammed it. Someone jammed it, she repeated, barely able to process the idea. He nodded grimly. "We'll collect this footage." As the officers inspected the house, Maya sat at her dining table, gripping the edge to keep her hands steady. Her mind was racing, not just with fear, but confusion. Who would do this? She didn't have enemies. She worked in finance, kept to herself, barely posted online. She thought back to the driver, the calmness in his voice, the way he didn't ask her to sign anything. She suddenly realized she hadn't seen any company logo on his shirt. It had just been plain beige fabric. She turned to the officers. "The delivery man, he said he had to give it to me directly. No label, no return address. Did you recognize him?" She shook her head. "No. He drove a white van, no markings." Officer Jensen wrote it down. "We'll check local delivery routes. If it's legitimate, we'll find out where it came from." But Maya knew it wasn't legitimate. Deep down, she could feel it. That wasn't a random stranger's act. It was personal. Someone had planned it. Someone wanted her to be afraid. After an hour, the officers found nothing unusual. No hidden cameras, no signs of entry. They promised to patrol the area and left her with a case number. When the door shut behind them, the silence returned, heavier this time. Maya walked slowly through her house, checking locks twice. Every reflection, every shadow seemed unfamiliar. In her bedroom, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the window. The same angle as the photo. She could almost feel the presence of whoever stood there 20 minutes before. The steady hand holding a camera, the quiet breath of someone too close. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Nice place." Her stomach dropped. She stared at the message until her screen dimmed. Her fingers hovered over the keypad, but she couldn't decide whether to reply or block the number. Instead, she opened her laptop to review the footage again, this time from the backyard camera. At 3:36 p.m., there was movement. A shadow. Someone walking along the fence line, barely visible, wearing a cap. They stopped, looked straight at the lens, then the feed cut to static. Her hands went cold. She played it again. The shadow was gone the next second, but the image burned in her mind. Whoever it was knew exactly where her cameras were, and how to avoid them. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across her window. She jumped. Her rational mind tried to reason with her. Maybe it was all a sick prank. Maybe someone hacked her feed. But another thought crept in, one she couldn't shake. What if this wasn't random at all? What if someone she knew wanted her scared, watching her, testing how she'd react? The more she thought about it, the more one name kept coming back. Detective Harris, the man who'd handled her last identity theft report months ago. He'd been unusually friendly afterward, sending follow-up texts, offering to check in. At the time, she'd thought he was being polite. Now, she wasn't so sure. Maya stood, locking the bedroom window one last time. Then she turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the hallway. She lay awake for hours, listening, every creak, every gust of wind, every small sound magnified. Somewhere outside, she thought she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, fading into the night. And though she told herself it was just her imagination, deep down, she knew the truth. Someone had been in her house. Someone had watched her. And whoever sent that photograph wasn't finished yet. The morning after the package incident, Maya barely slept. Every sound in her house still felt wrong. Every creak like a whisper. Every light flicker like a warning. She sat by her kitchen window, staring at the empty street outside, waiting for the sun to rise high enough to make her feel safe again. The police had promised to follow up, but she hadn't heard back. The only thing she had was fear. Constant, quiet fear. At 10 a.m., her phone rang. The caller ID showed Detective Harris. She remembered him from months ago, when she'd reported a data breach at work. He had been helpful then, kind even. She answered, her voice low. "Maya, I heard about the incident," he said quickly. "I'm assigned to your case now." "You?" she asked, surprised. Double quotes, "Yes. I read the report." "That's disturbing. I'll stop by this afternoon, okay? We'll check your house together." His voice was calm, reassuring, the kind of tone that made people trust him. She wanted to believe it was coincidence that he got the case. She needed someone to believe in. When Harris arrived, he was polite as always, tall, mid-40s, clean-cut, the type of man who seemed dependable. He carried a notepad and a soft smile. As he looked around, he asked questions about her cameras, her neighborhood, her routines. He seemed genuinely concerned. "Did anyone have access to your house recently?" he asked. "No one," Maya said. "I live alone." "Okay," he said, nodding. "You did the right thing calling us. Whoever did this wanted to scare you. We'll find them." His confidence was comforting. For the first time since the delivery, she felt like she could breathe again. He stayed for about an hour, checking windows, locks, and corners. Before leaving, he gave her his card. "If you notice anything strange, anything at all, call me directly. Day or night." That night, he texted, "Everything quiet? Sleep with the lights on just in case." Maya hesitated before replying. "Thanks, Detective. I'm fine." But she wasn't. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching her. The next few days blurred together. Harris kept checking in. Short texts, sometimes calls. At first, it felt reassuring. But then it started feeling strange. He always seemed to know when she was home. Once, when she said she'd gone out to the store, he replied, "I figured. Your car wasn't in the driveway." That detail caught her off guard. How did he know? He didn't live nearby. Another night, around 11 p.m., she got a text. "Are you okay? You haven't answered." She frowned. She hadn't messaged him all day. Why was he keeping track? She typed back, "I'm fine. Please only message if it's about the case." He didn't reply. The next day, she received an email from him with a subject line, "Update." It contained nothing but a short note. "Trust me. Don't talk to anyone else about the package." Something about it felt wrong. She read it twice, then deleted it. Later that evening, she checked her security footage again. She'd upgraded the system after the incident. New cameras, better angles, stronger encryption. But as she scrubbed through the timeline from the day before, she froze. There, at 7:42 p.m., a man walked up to her porch. He looked around, then stepped out of frame. His build was familiar. Tall, broad shoulders, same walk. She zoomed in, pausing on the moment his face turned slightly toward the lens. The lighting was dim, but it was enough. Detective Harris. Her heart dropped. Why was he there? He hadn't mentioned visiting. He hadn't even texted. She replayed the footage again. He was carrying something. A small envelope. He slipped it through her mail slot and walked away. Maya ran to the door. The envelope was still on the floor. She stared at it, afraid to touch it. Finally, she picked it up and opened it. Inside was a note. "You shouldn't have deleted my message." Her breath caught. She backed away, the paper shaking in her hand. How long had he been watching her? Was he behind the package too? The photo, the van, the glitching cameras. It all connected now, horribly clear. She grabbed her phone, but she didn't call him. Instead, she called the police station directly and asked for the department's front desk. "I need to report something about Detective Harris," she said quickly. "He's the one who's been contacting me. He might be involved." The officer on the other end sounded confused. "Detective Harris?" "Ma'am, he's not assigned to your case." Maya froze. "What do you mean?" "He's on leave. Medical leave. Has been for 2 months." The phone almost slipped from her hand. "No," she whispered. "That can't be right. He came to my house." There was a pause. Then, "Can you confirm your address?" She did. The officer's tone grew urgent. "Stay inside. Lock your doors. Someone will be there immediately." Maya hung up and ran to the windows, pulling down the curtains. Panic pressed against her ribs. If Harris wasn't on duty, that meant every visit, every message, every check-in was something else entirely personal, obsessive. Minutes later, she heard a faint knock on her back door. Not the front, the back. "Maya?" The voice was calm, familiar. "It's me, Detective Harris. We need to talk." Her pulse hammered. She didn't answer. "I know you're scared," he said. "But you shouldn't have called them. They don't understand what's really going on." She backed into the hallway, clutching her phone. She texted the station. "He's here. At my house now." "Maya," he continued, voice lower now. "You think I'm the bad guy? You don't know what I've been protecting you from." His words made her stomach turn. She heard the doorknob rattle. "Don't make me force my way in," he warned softly. Then sirens. Faint at first, then louder, growing fast. Red and blue lights flickered through the curtains. She heard Harris curse under his breath, then footsteps retreating through the yard. Police cars screeched to a stop out front. 2 officers ran to the back while one came through the front. Maya opened the door just as they arrived. Her hands shook, but she managed to explain everything. The texts, the fake assignment, the envelope. Within minutes, the house was swarming with officers. They searched the yard, but Harris was gone. Inside, one officer, Sergeant Lane, sat with her as she tried to breathe. "You did the right thing calling us," he said. "We've had concerns about him before. Nothing solid until now." "What kind of concerns?" "Crossing lines with victims," he said carefully. "Getting too involved." The words made her skin crawl. She realized then that she hadn't been chosen randomly. He'd picked her. The case months ago, the stolen data, had been his way in. Over the next few days, police surveillance stayed outside her home. They installed new locks and checked for hidden devices. They found something that made her stomach twist: a small camera hidden behind her bedroom vent. The footage stored on a memory card inside showed clips of her sleeping, reading, sitting at her desk, days' worth of recordings. The timestamp on the last video? 3:37 p.m., the same as the photo. That night, Maya sat on her couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the card in the evidence bag. The officers said they'd track Harris down soon. But even with them outside, she didn't feel safe. Her privacy had been torn apart. 2 days later, she received another text from an unknown number. "You told them. I thought you were different." She deleted it immediately, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. How was he still reaching her? The police traced the message but said it came from a burner phone. She couldn't sleep. Every hour, she checked the cameras. Every shadow outside made her flinch. Then, late one night, she saw movement on her front porch camera again. The screen flickered, a brief blackout, like before. When it came back, there was nothing. She checked the side camera. Nothing. The backyard, nothing. But when she looked at the timestamp of the blackout, her stomach dropped. It was exactly 3:37 a.m. Her phone buzzed. Another message. "You should have trusted me, Maya." That was the moment something inside her changed. The fear turned into something sharper: anger, control. She realized Harris had counted on her fear to keep her quiet. But fear was no longer enough. She made a decision that night. If he was watching her, then she'd let him, but on her terms. She began recording everything, every text, every voicemail, every moment of camera interference. She created duplicate backups in the cloud, copies labeled under false names. She set traps, leaving her house for short trips and checking footage to see when he appeared. Each time he did. He was careful, always just out of frame. But there. It was as if he wanted her to know. Days turned into weeks. She worked with internal affairs in secret, sending evidence anonymously, under another name. She didn't want him to know she was the one exposing him. And then, one morning, the news broke. Detective under investigation for harassment and illegal surveillance. His name was there in bold. Maya watched the screen in silence. She should have felt relief, maybe even victory. But instead, there was only exhaustion. Her house was quiet again, her locks were new, and her phone had stopped buzzing. Still, every time she glanced at the corner of her room, she half expected to see a camera light blinking back at her. She'd won. Yes, but the victory felt hollow. She had learned something no one ever told her. When someone violates your trust, revenge doesn't heal you. It just replaces one kind of fear with another. And somewhere out there, she knew Harris was watching that news too. His pride shattered, his mask gone. But deep down, she also knew it wasn't over. People like him didn't disappear quietly. They waited. And when her phone buzzed that night, no name, just a blank screen. She didn't even have to look. She already knew who it was. The news about Detective Harris spread quickly. Every major local channel ran the story. Detective suspended for stalking investigation victim. His photo flashed across the screen, The same calm face that had once seemed trustworthy, now exposed under bright newsroom lights. For everyone else, it was a headline. For Maya Rourke, it was personal. The day the story broke, she sat on her couch in silence, watching the broadcast. Reporters spoke in clipped tones, using words like misconduct and boundary violation. They made it sound clinical, procedural, not terrifying. They didn't mention the photos, the secret cameras, or the nights she'd spent sitting awake, clutching her phone. To them, it was another scandal. To her, it had been survival. Police officers called to reassure her. Internal Affairs thanked her for her cooperation. They said the case against Harris was strong, and that he would likely lose his badge. Everyone wanted her to feel safe again. But she didn't. Because safety isn't something you can promise. It's something you stop believing in once it's broken. That night, she sat in the dark, staring at the front door. She thought about everything he'd done. How he'd tricked her into trusting him. How he'd stood in her house pretending to protect her while planting hidden cameras. And then the thought came. What if he wasn't working alone? Someone had delivered that package before any of this started. Someone had taken that first picture. Was it possible Harris had helped? The idea wouldn't leave her. She opened her laptop and rewatched the old footage from her doorbell camera. The man in the tan uniform, his face was still blurry, turned slightly away. She zoomed in on the frame where he handed her the package. Something caught her attention. A faint mark on his wrist. A small tattoo of 3 dots. She remembered something. When Harris first came to her house after the incident, he'd rolled up his sleeves while checking the locks. On his right wrist, she'd seen the same 3-dot tattoo. Her chest tightened. It had been him all along. He hadn't just stalked her later. He'd started everything from the very beginning. The anger she had buried for weeks came rushing back. Fear had kept her quiet, but now anger gave her clarity. He had stolen her peace, her sense of control, her nights. Now she wanted it back. She called Internal Affairs again, told them what she'd found, that the delivery driver in the footage was Harris himself. The officer promised to forward it to the lead investigator, but something in his tone told her they already suspected that. "Ms. Rourke," the investigator said over the phone, "we have enough evidence to prosecute him, but he's gone off the grid. We can't locate him." Her grip on the phone tightened. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "He didn't show up for questioning this morning. We're tracking his vehicle, but he switched off his work phone." Maya's heart pounded. He was out there, angry, desperate, and with nothing left to lose. She hung up and walked to the window. The night was still, the air thick. Every sound outside made her flinch. She forced herself to think logically. Her house was secure. The cameras were working. And police knew about her case. But logic didn't help when the person you feared most was unpredictable. Then her phone buzzed. One message. Unknown number. "You think you've won?" Her breath caught. She didn't reply. Another message followed. "You took everything from me. Now I'll take something back." Her first instinct was to call the police, but she stopped. Something about the message felt different. Not just threatening, deliberate. Like he wanted her reaction. Like he was testing her. She thought fast. If he was watching, he'd be watching her phone too. So instead of panicking, she opened her blinds and turned on the living room lights. She wanted him to see her calm, collected, unafraid. Then she sat at her laptop and began to plan. Revenge wasn't what she'd wanted before. But now, it was the only way to end this. She'd already learned that fear gave him power. But evidence could take it away. If she could catch him trying to contact her again, she could destroy whatever story he was preparing to tell. For 3 days, she pretended to live normally. She worked remotely, watered her plants, even jogged in the evenings. But she was watching everything. Her cameras were connected to a cloud drive he couldn't access. Her phone was mirrored to a second hidden number, and she had police surveillance updates running in the background. The first 2 days, nothing happened. The third night, at exactly 3:37 a.m., the same cursed time as before, her backyard camera flickered. When the feed came back, she saw a shadow near the fence. Someone was there. Her heart raced, but she didn't move. She let it play out. The shadow moved closer. The outline of a man, crouched low, trying to stay out of view. Then he lifted something shiny toward her back window. The glass shimmered under the moonlight. She whispered to herself, "Got you." She pressed a key on her laptop, activating a motion alarm she'd secretly connected to the police system. Within seconds, a silent alert was sent. The man stepped closer, testing the window. Red and blue lights exploded outside. He froze. Then he ran. Officers swarmed the backyard within moments, flashlights cutting through the dark. Maya stayed by the window, watching as they shouted orders. She saw him trip, caught in the beam of a flashlight. His face unmistakable even from a distance. Harris. When they pulled him to the ground, he looked straight at her window. For a second, their eyes met. He didn't yell, didn't resist. He just stared and smiled. That smile stayed with her long after they took him away. The next morning, the police called again. They'd found evidence linking him to multiple stalking cases. He'd used his position to gain access to addresses, security codes, and victim reports. Maya wasn't the first, but she was the one who exposed him. They called her brave. But bravery wasn't what she felt. It was something closer to emptiness. In the days that followed, reporters tried to contact her. She ignored them. She wanted peace, not publicity. She deleted her social media, changed her number, and moved her office setup to a rented co-working space downtown. Life was quiet again. Quiet in a way that felt almost strange. But even in that quiet, there were moments when she still felt watched. Sometimes, while working, she'd sense eyes on her. Sometimes, she'd wake up in the middle of the night certain someone was standing outside. Fear like that doesn't vanish. It lingers, hiding behind ordinary moments. A week later, a letter arrived at her door. No stamp, no return address. Just her name written in bold black ink. Her chest tightened. She thought about throwing it away. But something inside told her to open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. One sentence. "You played your part well." No signature. Her eyes darted to the window. The street was empty calm. But she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A parked car across the road, tinted windows, engine off. It had been there all morning. Her hand shook as she took a picture of it. She zoomed in, but the glass reflected only the bright sky. She called the police again. They came within minutes, checked the car, and found nothing. It was clean. No fingerprints, no plates. Whoever had left it knew what they were doing. That night, Maya sat in the dark, thinking, was it Harris again? Or someone else? Maybe one of his connections? Maybe a warning? Or maybe just a copycat who'd seen her story on the news? She realized then that revenge might have stopped one man, but it hadn't ended the story. Her evidence, her courage, had exposed a system that allowed people like him to operate. And maybe, just maybe, that's why she received that letter. Still, she refused to live in fear again. She installed even better security, learned self-defense, and volunteered to help victims of online stalking. People began reaching out to her for advice. People who had been through what she had. Slowly, she turned her pain into purpose. Months passed. Harris stayed in custody, waiting for trial. But even from behind bars, he found ways to remind her he existed. Letters returned from prison. Some intercepted, some not. Each one contained short, strange lines like, "You taught me something about patience." She didn't reply to any. One evening, as she was leaving her volunteer office, a young woman approached her. Nervous, mid-20s, clutching her phone. "You're Maya Rourke, right?" Maya hesitated. "Yes." The woman looked terrified. "I think someone's been watching me. I got a photo in the mail. Of my bedroom." Maya's breath caught. The same words. The same beginning. She placed a hand gently on the woman's arm. "You're safe now," she said softly. "We'll handle it." That night, when Maya drove home, she thought about how everything had started, with a simple knock, a box and a photo. It had taken everything from her, but it had also forced her to change. She had faced fear, fought back, and learned that revenge, when rooted in truth, could become something else. Justice. Back in her home, she poured herself a cup of tea and opened her window for the first time in months. The air was cool, the sky quiet. Then, across the street, a faint red light blinked just once before disappearing. Maya didn't panic. She just smiled slightly and whispered, "Your turn." Because this time she wasn't the one being watched. She was the one watching back.